All right, so today we're diving into something huge, the global race to write the rulebook for artificial intelligence. And, this isn't just about a bunch of boring laws. This is about who gets to define the code of our future. So let's get right into it.
AI is literally everywhere now, right? It's changing how we work, how we hang out, everything. But that brings up a really big question. Who's actually in charge? Who's setting the boundaries for this incredibly powerful technology? Well, it turns out there are three main players in this game: the EU, China, and the US. And believe me, they are not on the same page.
So, at the very heart of this whole thing is this massive fundamental trade off. It's a classic balancing act, right? On one side, you've got safety, protecting people. On the other, you've got innovation, letting this amazing tech create incredible new things. The big question is, how do you get one without crushing the other? Every country we're going to look at is basically trying to walk this same high-stakes tightrope, but they're all doing it in completely different ways. Okay, so first up, let's head over to Europe. The EU has decided to be the world's proactive rulemaker. They're building this huge, comprehensive, rights-focused framework called the AI Act. You can kind of think of them as the super meticulous planner in the group, trying to create one single rulebook that covers everything for everyone. The core of their entire plan is this thing they call the AI risk pyramid. And right at the very top, the absolute no-go zone is prohibited risk. We're talking about AI uses that are just considered so dangerous to our basic rights that they're banned, completely off the table. Think things like government social scoring systems or using AI for certain kinds of mass surveillance. Just no. Okay, so let's step down one level on the pyramid to high-risk systems. Now, this is where the EU puts most of its regulatory muscle. This category covers AI that could seriously impact your safety or your fundamental rights. We're talking about AI in medical devices, in critical infrastructure, or even the algorithms that decide if you get a job. For these, the rules are super strict. You need tons of human oversight, clear documentation, the whole shebang. Then we have the next category, limited risk. This is stuff like chatbots or AI-generated content. And here, the big idea is really simple: transparency. That's it. The main rule is you just have to be honest and tell people they're interacting with an AI, not a human. No trying to trick anyone. And finally, at the very bottom of the pyramid, you've got minimal risk. And honestly, this is the biggest category by far. It covers pretty much most of the AI we use every single day, like the spam filter in your email or the AI that powers characters in video games. For these, the EU basically takes a hands-off approach. They're like, you're good, and leave them unregulated. So you might be wondering, just how specific do these EU rules get? Well, take a look at this number. That's 10 to the power of 25 flops. Yeah, I know. It's basically a geeky way of measuring a computer's raw processing power. But here's why it matters. If an AI model is powerful enough to cross that very specific line, the EU slaps a systemic risk label on it. And that triggers a whole new set of even stricter safety rules. It just goes to show you they're getting really granular with this. And all this detail, all this specificity, it's all part of the EU's master plan. It's a strategy that has a pretty cool name: the Brussels effect. If you remember the GDPR data privacy law, it's the exact same playbook. The idea is that the EU market is so big and important that big tech companies all over the world will just find it easier to build one product that meets the EU's strict rules rather than making a bunch of different versions. It's a really clever way for them to export their rules to the rest of the world without forcing anyone. All right, let's switch gears and look at our next major player, China. Now, China's approach is different. You could call it a strategic hybrid. It's this really fascinating and kind of paradoxical mix of super tight top-down government control on one hand and this incredibly dynamic, competitive market on the other. So how does this hybrid model actually work? Well, it's basically a two-pronged approach. First, you have the central government setting the big picture direction. They make sure all AI development lines up with national goals, things like promoting core socialist values. But then, at the same time, they actively encourage this absolutely fierce competition between companies on the ground, pushing them to innovate and build the next big thing. Now, if you just look at the rules on paper, China's system seems incredibly strict. I mean, for a big company like Baidu to release a new AI model, they have to jump through a ton of hoops. We're talking formal registration with the government, really strict data management policies, and then constant ongoing monitoring to make sure the AI doesn't go off the rails. But, and this is a huge but, Here's the twist. While the big tech giants are under this heavy microscope, the government is also propping up thousands of smaller, super innovative companies that they call little giants. And for these guys, the rules are often, well, let's just say enforcement is a lot more relaxed. It's done on purpose to make sure they don't stifle that creative spark. It's basically selective enforcement being used as a strategic tool. And that brings us to our third player, the United States. The US approach is, well, the polar opposite of the EU's single rulebook. It's incredibly decentralized. Instead of one big law, the US is more like a marketplace, a dynamic and, yeah, sometimes chaotic marketplace of competing ideas and rules coming from everywhere, but the federal government and all the individual states. So at the federal level, the biggest move so far has been President Biden's big executive order on AI. And the strategy here is really telling. Instead of creating some new, shiny Department of AI, the order just hands out over 100 different tasks to more than 50 existing government agencies. It's like, you handle this part, you handle that part. And if you look at the priorities, it's clear the focus is on how the government itself uses AI, and of course, on national safety and security. But really, in the US, you've got to watch the states because that's where a ton of the action is. And there's no better example than the recent story out of California with a bill known as SB 1047. I mean, this is Silicon Valley's home state, right? So of course they tried to pass what would have been the most ambitious and strictest AI law in the entire country. And when I say it was a story, I mean it was a total whirlwind. The bill was introduced in February. It gets hammered out in these intense debates and actually passes the legislature in September. But then, just a few weeks later, right at the end of the month, bam, the governor vetoes it. It all happens so fast, and it just perfectly captures how heated and fast-moving this whole debate is in the U.S. So why the last-minute veto? Well, Governor Newsom's explanation really gets to the heart of the whole American debate on this. He basically said, look, I'm not a fan of creating rules based purely on how big or powerful an AI model is. You know, like that flops number we saw from the EU. He argued that we need to be more targeted and focus the rules on how the AI is actually used. It's a totally different philosophy. Should we regulate the engine size or where the car is being driven? Power versus application. It's a huge difference. So there you have it. You've got the EU with its meticulous, comprehensive rulebook. You've got China with its strategic, hybrid model. And you have the US with its decentralized, market-driven approach. Three completely different paths, three very different philosophies, all trying to govern the same powerful technology in a world that's more connected than ever.
Okay, let's just break it down one last time, side by side. The EU, they're all about safety and fundamental rights, using that risk pyramid as their main tool. China, they're playing a balancing act between state stability and market competition, and they use selective enforcement to do it. And the US, their main goal is to keep that innovation engine running, so they're leveraging the government agencies they already have. See? Three totally different paths, all driven by very different core values.
And all of this leaves us with one last really important question. Because this isn't just some abstract, high-level political debate. These three models are in a direct competition. They're fighting to become the global standard, the one that ultimately defines the AI that you use every day, the one on your phone, at your job, everywhere. So the question for you is which one of these visions for the future is going to win out?